Home prices in Tampa, Florida are on the decline heading into 2025, and they could drop by even more over the course of the next year. In this video, I'm going to give you the data on the Tampa-St Pete housing market and show you where I think prices are going to drop the most. And the big issue here, folks, is supply. We have a gigantic supply spike hitting the Tampa, Florida housing market as we speak. We're up to 16,000 listings for sale. That's the highest level we've seen in close to a decade. And that skyrocketing supply is now pushing down prices all across the Tampa metro, which includes Hillsborough County, Pinellas County, Pasco County, Hernando County. We're seeing prices start to drop in many of these areas, particularly on specific listings. For instance, this is a house in St. Petersburg that I've been tracking now for like 3 months. It's being sold by a big Wall Street investor. They purchased the home for $550 in April 2022, and they've now since cut the price on it to $415. So they're taking a $135,000 loss from what they bought it for, this Wall Street investor, and the house isn't selling. And so this is the environment we're in Tampa right now. And I think a lot of you watching this video, you kind of understand that the market has shifted down. The question is, how much are prices going to drop next year? Well, I think they could drop by a lot because the metrics we're now seeing turn up across the Tampa, Florida housing market are saying that sellers are really having a tough time. For instance, we talked about the inventory here in Tampa, but let's look at the days on the market. How long are homes sitting on the market? And you can see in Pinellas County, it's 80 days. Hillsborough County, it's 70 days. Manatee County, it's 82 days. You go over to Osceola County in the middle of the state, it's 83 days. So we actually have just really high DOM everywhere. But if you go to Pinellas, for instance, you can see that the days on the market went from 45 days last year to 80 days this year. We have the highest DOM that we've seen in a decade. And this skyrocketing DOM, skyrocketing inventory is leading to a big downward home price forecast from Reventure App that I'm going to talk more about later in this video. Because we here at Reventure App developed a home price forecast score that is very accurate at predicting the future direction of prices over the next year. This home price forecast score is ranked from 0 to 100, and if your market falls below 50, between 0 and 50, it's more likely that prices will drop. And so I'm going to get into those forecasts in a second, but first I actually want to just play devil's advocate and give you some reasons why Florida actually still might be a good place to buy in the long run. Because I want to kind of separate the short term from the long term here. In the short term, Florida's housing market is crashing. There really isn't much of a debate about that when you look at the data. Inventory spiking, home sales are collapsing, days on the market spiking. I mean, the Florida housing market's correcting fast, and will continue to correct. However, in the long term, Florida is a good place to buy real estate generally because it has positive population growth, positive demographic growth. For instance, you can see that the state has grown its population by 6.1% over the last 5 years. From 2018 to 2023, 6.1% growth. The population went from 21.3 million to 22.6 million. In terms of how that growth stacks up against other states, Florida had the 6th highest population growth rate in America. Number one by far was Idaho at 12%, Utah at 8%, Montana at 6%, Delaware at 6%, Texas at 6%, then Florida. So you're going to struggle to find a state with better long-term population growth than Florida, which is why many investors, many realtors, many mortgage brokers, many people just come here to be in the real estate market. Because in the long run, it's a growing area that tends to push prices up over the long run. However, the demand in the market has slowed considerably over the last 2 years because of how expensive it has become. For instance, everyone, the number of home sales in the Tampa metro have plummeted to their lowest level going back at least 7 years. This is data from Redfin, and this is pretty alarming data that you should pay attention to. These home sales are down 40% from where they were at their peak during the pandemic. 40% decline in buyer demand. In addition, the sales are down about 30% from where they were before the pandemic. So I want you to think about that, everyone. Not only has the Florida market slowed from the pandemic, it's gone down from where it was before the pandemic. We had 1,200 weekly home sales in Tampa in November 2019. We have 865 weekly home sales in Tampa in 2024. And so that's telling you that there's been a slowdown in migration, a slowdown in population growth, which is going to mean that this housing market has to correct. And a good question is, well, how much could prices actually go down? Well, to answer that question, let's go to Reventure app and look at a data point called the overvalued percentage. We're looking at how over or undervalued prices are in all the different cities across America. And let's zoom in here on Tampa. Tampa-St Pete Clearwater, we could see is 27% overvalued compared to its long-run norms. Pinellas and Hillsborough, 28% overvalued. Pasco is actually less overvalued at 19%. Hernando's 31% overvalued. If you go down, Manatee County's 15% overvalued. Sarasota's 18% overvalued. So overvaluation rates of anywhere from 15 to 30%, indicating price downside. Now, I want to show you guys how we actually calculate overvaluation rate at Reventure app, and it's through a data point called the value to income ratio. So for instance, in Pinellas County, the typical value of a home today is $394,000, while the median income is only $72,000. So the incomes are low still in Pinellas County compared to the US average. That leads to a 5.5 home value to income ratio. Whereas over the last 2 decades, on average in Pinellas County, home prices traded for 4.3 times income. And actually from 2008 to 2017, prices traded well below that. So we're in an overvalued market today in Pinellas County. There's very little question about that. Prices compared to incomes and rents are way higher than the long-term norm, which increases the odds that prices drop in the future. Now, prices have been overvalued in Tampa, Pinellas County, and the rest of Florida for the last 3 or 4 years, yet we haven't seen the major crash happen yet. And I see you guys in the comments section talk about this. You say, Nick, on one hand, I understand this data you're showing me. On the other hand, like, why hasn't the crash happened? And it all has to do with supply and inventory. Up until the last year, we did not have the supply levels on the market necessary to cause a downturn in prices. So for instance, 3 years ago, there was only 1,700 homes on the market in Pinellas. 2 years ago, there was 3,200 homes. Last year, there was 4,200 homes, starting to get more inventory last year. Now we have 5,600 homes on the market in Pinellas County, by far the highest level in a decade. So now we're finally unlocking the supply and the inventory necessary to bring down prices. And so I hope that's helpful for you guys to understand, right? Is that the market's been overvalued for 3 or 4 years, but prices have only really started to drop in the last 6 months because the inventory wasn't quite there yet 2 or 3 years ago. Now we have enough homes for sale. Now we have homes sitting on the market for a very long time. Those are the things that pressure sellers into dropping the price. For instance, here's a house in Bradenton, which is to the south of Tampa. You could see it's for $450 grand. This was a house that was originally listed at $630,000 in 2023. And so the value estimate on this house has gone down from $617,000 all the way down to $440,000, which has basically erased a large portion of the pandemic appreciation and now is bringing the values closer to what they were prior to the pandemic. Of course, those type of declines aren't being seen everywhere across the market. In particular, we're seeing investors start to sell. Big Wall Street investors are now dumping homes all across Western Florida. This is an area that the Wall Street investors have now put on their blacklist. They are no longer buying, and many are starting to sell and sell at a big loss from what they purchased for 2 years ago. The question is, how much are prices going to drop in 2025? And to answer that question, let's look at the Reventure app home price forecast score for Tampa, as well as its surrounding counties. So to do this, let's go to popular data on Reventure app and hit home price forecast score. You could see in Tampa, we're at a 37 out of 100, which is one of the worst scores for any city in America. For instance, if we look at metros with a population above 1 million, sort by the lowest score, we can see Austin's the lowest score, Denver follows, San Antonio follows, and then Tampa. So Tampa literally is one of the worst performing housing markets in America right now, based on the underlying data. However, the thing to understand is that there's huge differences by zip code and neighborhood. So there's actually still some areas in Tampa-St Pete which are kind of stable and holding on. So what you guys need to do, if you're a buyer and investor who wants to understand your market better, is go to www.reventure.app and search your city and zip code and understand how this score is trending over time. When you see a score in October 2024 of 33 out of 100, that's saying over the next year, we expect prices to drop. To access that price forecast data, which is tremendously important for you as a buyer, to have a better sense of what you're getting into, head to www.reventure.app and sign up for a premium plan. You're going to need a premium plan at $39 a month to access the full suite of data, but it's well worth it. The cost of buying a house is $400,000, $500,000, in the Tampa area, you're going to want the data on your side as a buyer and investor in 2025 so you can understand with greater certainty where prices are heading. That's going to help you make a better decision about where and when to buy a house. Access that data right now at www.reventure.app.